folks have gathered, and I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask that a quorum count be taken so that we can have a meeting of record. Yes, so if you are a member of the church, please raise your hand. And it certainly looks like we have 51, but I just want to do this properly. Mary is counting. I don't see it happening, but yeah. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so we have at over 65, I'd like in that call the meeting to order and thank everybody for taking the time out of their day. I'm going to just read the notification that's in the annual report. So our purpose here today is first to receive statement and prayer by our minister, Reverend Scott Cousineau. Second, to receive information and take action if required on the reports of various officers and teams of the church. Specifically, we need to and will hopefully approve the minutes of the last year's meeting, accept the report of the clerk, which is attached, accept the financial reports of the treasurer and investment team, and finally, accept the First Parish Council report on mission, vision, and planning. Third, we want to receive and act upon the proposed mission plan, which Charlie will present. Fourth, we want to elect all officers, church council members, and delegates of the church as required by the bylaws of the church. And finally, and not least significant, we have to also, in voting, to ratify the actions taken by the church council, its officers, and all teams on behalf of this church from January 19th, 2025 until this date. So without any further ado, the minutes, well, let's call Scott. Scott, if you could, thank you.
I know that you have all heard enough from me today, but I did want to begin, and I'll keep my comments brief, but begin with a word of gratitude. I wanted to thank Tim McGee for serving as our moderator for the last 2 years, and I want to thank Mary Ann Cook also for serving as our clerk. They are both stepping down at this time, but did want to thank them for their service. I want to thank Tom Kircher for serving as our vice moderator and his willingness to step up and assume the role of moderator, as we will soon vote on. And also as for Jamie Beals, who is also willing to step up and serve as our vice moderator. But also I want to thank all of you that serve on the various teams and committees of the church. I want to thank all of you who are here today, who are present for this meeting. I want to thank all of our church school teachers, our choir members, this whole cloud of witnesses, all this group of volunteers, whether you have an assigned role, a voted role, or you just do what you do. Thank you for what you do to make First Parish Church such a wonderful and active and vibrant place. So I wanted to thank all of you. But also, I wanted to now just speak just for a moment about thanking you for creating such a loving space. God calls us to live in this beloved community, and it's especially important in light of what we know is going on in our world around us. And so I want to thank you for creating a space where love is the foundation, and welcome is the foundation, and acceptance is the foundation, and being willing to engage in ways that deepen relationships and explore faith together, and are welcome to have those are willing to have those difficult conversations. And so I just want to thank you all for what you do to make this such a special place. I want to thank you for making people feel welcome here. Whenever I do new member classes, one of the things that when I ask them why they are here in this new member class is because you all made them feel so welcome. And that's an important thing in the world today, to know that people are welcome someplace. And as we experienced a few weeks ago when the young man Nick just wanted to be seen and know that he matters, it reinforces for us what it means to do what we do here and to manifest love and welcome in this way. So I just want to thank you all for that as we go into this coming year and we explore new opportunities. There are things that we're going to talk about today where we will talk about new ways that we can continue to expand our reach to one another, but also our reach beyond. So really all I want to do just say is thank you. Thank you for what you are. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for loving so passionately and deeply. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for calling us to this place. We thank you for inviting us in. We thank you for gathering us together in this community of love and compassion. Be with us this morning as we meet. Be in our conversation. Be in our discussion. Show us what it is that you would have us to do. How can we, in the days, weeks, and months to come, shine with your light and love with your heart? We ask all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Scott. So at this time, I'd like to ask if there's a motion on last year's minutes. Phil, seconded? Yes, Carol. I'm sorry, Carol, hold on. We have a mic. Could I have a volunteer to be a mic runner? Sue will, I think. Thanks, Eric. Sorry, Carol, I think if you're gonna, I'd like to hear, yeah.
There was an error are you talking about this 2025 annual report?
I am, yes.
Yeah, there was just an error in the mission report because we did not have a mum sale for Daisy's Children. Daisy's Children was stopped.
Okay.
Closed.
Thank you. Any other comments on the minutes from last year? I'd like to ask, all in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Eric, I'd like to ask Eric if he would read the report of the clerk. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Eric Steva. I serve First Parish as member of the CE and media teams, as well as a member of Church Council. Our clerk for 2025, Mary Ann Cook, is not here today, so in her stead, I will be reading the highlights for the clerk's report. It is our tradition to recognize our 50-year members here, as well as those who have passed away over the past year, followed by a moment of silence. So there are 12 50-year members that we're recognizing here today in alphabetical order. They are Kathy Balageron, Susan Burgess, L. Daniel Dearborn, Joe Dearborn, Corleen Garland, Ann Caney, Kathy Angel Lee, Beverly Loring, Carol Nero, Harry Nielsen, Linda Simonson, and Mary Warner. We lost 7 members of our church family last year. Their names are Sandra A. Winship, Trygve W. Lund, Tracy K. Boardman, Ann I. Yoder, Glenna W. Trask, Dr. Gilbert Samuel, Thomas C. Winship. If we could just have a moment of silence for those who we have lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I apologize, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning of the meeting. My name is Tom Kircher. I served as vice moderator for the past 2 years. And in the absence of Tim McGee, our moderator, he asked me if I would run this meeting. So at this time, those of you who were at the budget meeting last Sunday have a little preview, but I would like to ask Charlie if he would, our treasurer, if he will present the budget. And this presentation will include all of the details. Some people asked, you know, that what we handed out last week was just 40,000 foot view. So thank you, Charlie.
So first of all, I'm Charlie Carter. I'm the treasurer, for better or worse. So first, let me thank Tom for having the meeting last week. I had the flu, and I'm still resolving, so I apologize if I snort, sniffle, or otherwise cough. But 2025, we'll start there. 2025 was a good year. 545,000 was the number, both on pretty much on income and on expense. There were a couple of little weird things. As an example, the loose collections in 2024 were $70,000, and kind of unexplained because they're loose collections. So there's no explanation for why it bumped up so much. So when we budgeted last year, we don't really have a whole lot to budget on other than historical. So 70 seemed a little aggressive, so we took it down to 60. Turns out we returned right back to where we were at 40. So we were 20,000 under on the income side, but we ended up pretty much even because we had some surprise expenses for the HVAC, but we also were underspent in personnel. So we had some open positions that we did not fill. Easiest way to save money is to not hire people you need. Therefore, it all came out pretty much even for the year. So we ended in a pretty good place on surplus, deficit, income, and expense. In cash, we did end up using a little bit more cash, but 50,000 of that was basically emergency repairs that were in the list that were accumulating for a potential capital campaign or comprehensive campaign, whatever you want to call it. But we do have a list of building and facility repairs that we need to start tackling. Some of those urgently came forward, so we borrowed against the operating cash. Those will come out of future donations to the capital campaign. So all in all, we did well in 2025. The caveat there that will pop up in 2026 budget is that we were, I don't know objectively or subjectively, but we were understaffed. And part of the reason why we got through 2025 okay was because we somehow kept it together even though we were understaffed. So we need to address that going forward, and that's part of the reason why there's a little bit of a systemic shock moving into 2026 budget. Does anyone have any questions about 2025? Yes. I'm sorry? Oh, largely the sexton position. And there was discussion throughout the year of whether or not we needed more pastoral support in an associate pastor or not. We never formally decided one way or another and kind of coasted through. But again, that comes up in 2026's budget. The other thing that will come up in I'm getting ahead of myself, but the other thing is that Sue has managed the bookkeeping and all of the kind of tactical components of the treasury. And we are looking to separate that both on a good control process. You wouldn't necessarily have Sue handle all the cash. We trust Sue implicitly, explicitly. But we really ought to address that and have a third party keep the books. And then I close and review. Sue can help manage with that. Okay, so any other questions on 2025, and we'll close the books on 2025. Tom, this better be a layup.
Thank you, Sue. Charlie, I'm just looking at the first slide you had there for the cash, the year-end results for 2025, just so that we understand. You have two accounts there. One is called a cash account, which has about $40,000 in it, and the
Yes.
second is called an investment account, which has about $270,000. Can you just tell folks what those accounts are and what their purpose is?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So cash accounts, basically that's our operating account, and we keep enough in there so that we don't have kind of last minute bounce checks or anything like that. So we keep 40 to 50,000 in that account. Investment accounts, this is separate from the investment portfolio, kind of. This basically is, over the years, there have been years where we've had a surplus. And for years, I'm told, this is, by the way, just for a little bit of context, this is only my second year that I've stood at the podium. And these are the kind of things where there's so much lore and historical information. You need to sit in the role for a while before you start understanding what's going on, especially, and I'll get to this too, our chart of accounts is one of the most scrambled hot messes I've encountered, but we'll get it cleaned up. But I'm told that a couple of years ago, they realized that they had the investment account money, the 270 plus or minus, basically just sitting in a checking account. And this was back when interest rates were at an all-time boring 2%. And we weren't getting any interest. We thought we could do better with money markets and some fixed income investments. So we transferred it over. The investment team manages it, but it's essentially more operating funds. So that's operating cash that's available to us when we need it and when we want to transfer it. So it's not legacy, it's not restricted, it is truly prior year surpluses. Yep. Shall we close the door on 2025? Do we vote separately to? I think we did last year, so why don't we just quickly, does someone move to accept the 2025 second? All in favor? Anyone not in favor? Oh, that's good. Yeah. Whew, half down. So 2026, this is fun. We have a history, I'm told, again, I haven't experienced it, but we have a history of years where we have a deficit budget and it's okay, and ultimately the congregation passes it. We also have very vocal statements from some members that it's not right to have an unbalanced budget, and that every year you need to balance specifically income to expense. If you don't have the income, you do not spend over the amount that you project on income. So we're kind of at a philosophical turning point, because just a word of process, we start budgeting in the fall, and it's very difficult to get people thinking about 2026 too early in 2025. So we try and kind of thread the needle when people start thinking about the following year. So we turn it out to the teams and say, what do you need for next year? What are your plans? How much are you going to spend? We get all those back, and we basically roll it up, and we match that against pledges. And pledges don't kind of formally get set until early December, mid-December, and then they still continue to trickle in. So it's very hard to kind of pick a date and say, this is it. So with that, we match the two up. Last year, very successfully, we had all of the team members get together with council, and each team member presented their budget in detail and what their plans were. This year, unfortunately, it was scheduled for, I believe it was a Monday night, and there was a snowstorm and icing, and we had very poor turnout. So we didn't have the full download that we should and will in the future. So that was a little bit of a challenge. The other thing is just when it all rolled up, I think I kind of walked into this with, oh, well, this is the way we do it. I think in the future, we'll try and get the annual report out a little bit earlier via email so that people actually have time to read it before the 15 minutes when you're trying to grab coffee, go to the restroom, and then come back for this meeting. So we have some process improvement that we need to impose on that. But when we finally rolled it up, basically we have a few items that are just a little bit off and one major one. So off from last year on the council expenses, there was, I think, a question last week about council expenses. So the large part of that is that there's $5,000 for kind of church dues to the main UCC. There's also $5,000 last year that we voted in. There are 5 special collections throughout the year, 4 of which are just passed through, like 1 great hour of sharing. So whatever we take in, we just write them a check and we're good to go. The 5th one is our church's wider mission, which is effectively a $5,000 dues for any church that wants to be considered a 5 for 5 church. In other words, they participate in all 5 of the offerings. So last year we had probably a half-hour debate about it in council. The decision was that we should be a 5 for 5. And so 5,000 of the council, and because council decided, not mission, it kind of arbitrarily ended up in council's budget. So that's 10,000. The other thing is, as I mentioned, our chart of accounts and our software that we're running has all of the charm of Windows 95. And it's, I would say that it is not serving its purpose. And the amount of time that I take each month, besides the just hassle of day-to-day entries, the amount of time I do translating from the system, the reporting is so bad that I have to then pop it out, put it in Excel, and I have to kind of reformat everything. So I think it's time to kind of jump 30 years and update our software system, and that the one that we have selected is about $2,000 a year, whereas before we were paying $500 a year. So there's a little increase for that. So that's the council expenses. The big one is personnel, as I've kind of already mentioned. We are struggling with understaffing, and the areas in which it kind of popped up as we need to get resolution and figure out what we're doing on personnel. And Phil, jump in at any point if you'd like to put on a helmet and talk it through. But basically, we have need for pastoral support in the form of an associate pastor. What we've done for the budget, and we try to budget conservatively, but what we've done for the budget is half-time for an associate pastor, and it will take time to hire this person. So we are going to start, for the budget purpose, July 1st with an associate pastor. And the numbers were calculated out as a percentage of the senior pastor package. So ultimately, that may or may not happen on that timeline. It may actually be delayed. I don't think it would necessarily pull forward, but we may save a little bit of money there over what our budget is. But to be conservative, we kept it in for the full half year. We have the bookkeeper in for $3,000. Again, better for control processes and to alleviate some of the pressure on Sue. And then the other is the sexton position. So this has been an open item for a couple of years. And we've basically begged, borrowed, I won't say stole, but we begged and borrowed, and we managed to keep the church in reasonable shape. But we need a sexton and an assistant sexton, just simply kind of shift management and the fact that one person can't be here 15 hours a day to handle all the needs. So we added those two positions. Offsetting those positions is a $30,000 line item for cleaning services that we had in the past. So we'll basically hire a sexton, an assistant sexton, and that'll replace the cleaning costs. So when you roll all of that up, we get to a place where we started at an $80,000 deficit. Then with the appeal from last week, we've closed the gap to 60,000. So we asked people to up their pledges if at all possible. We got an extra 20K. So from the 60, we could, depending if we want to, we can probably, without too much damage, we could probably trim out another 20 on managing hours and some of the personnel components. But that still leaves us with 40 on a gap. Of that 40, I think there are things that we haven't budgeted that could soften that 40 a little bit. One of the things is we will, right now we're involved in figuring out the accounting system, but as soon as we get that done, we're going to subscribe to Stripe so that people can just do a QR code in the bulletin or on a poster out there and give electronically. A lot of not-for-profits are doing this. I have no idea what the impact will be, whether it'll be positive or kind of a nice to have. But that could bring in more loose collections. There's the timing of some of the hires. So there are things that could soften it, but ultimately we have about a $40,000 gap right now in the worst case, 60 in the worst case, 40 if we are willing to kind of cut back on hours for personnel. So we're at kind of a crossroads and need to philosophically understand what people want to do. I don't have the power to decide one way or another. Council doesn't really either. And so we need to reach out and get people's appetite. We do have the funds for the reserves. Question is this the appropriate time to, you can view it as invest in growing the church, or is it a kind of philosophical hard line of no deficit? Or maybe there's a middle ground where there's, is 10,000 okay, but 60 isn't? I don't know. So I don't really know. Yep, Tom.
Just procedurally. Okay, I just want to make sure we're doing okay. So we've approved last year's report. Before we deliberate on the situation, Charlie's presented our current, the accounts and expenses that he has access to. I wonder if Brian, where's Brian? Brian is a member of the investment. We also have a separate account where we have an investment portfolio. And I think it's, before we talk about, making a decision for next year, I think now is a good time to hear from them as far as what other assets the church has available. So Brian, would you do that? And they also have to be accepted. This is a formal report that has to be voted on and accepted also, because it's a financial thing. So thank you. Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, sorry if I'm talking too much.
You're doing great, Charlie. Well, I'm subbing for someone who's subbing for someone. So I have a phone that's tied to someone who knows. So Lynn Selinsky is supposed to send me text when she looks at me in the eye and says, "My God, Doyle's sweating." So Lynn, can you help me out with, I guess the question is, what freedom do we have within the investment funds? Okay. Okay. Our total investment portfolio on 9/30/25 was $1,112,281.63. This page is in the packet of information that you have. Total gains on the portfolio on 9/30/25 was $72,895.72. Our portfolio was split between 60% restricted and 40% non-restricted holdings. The 2026 investment pledged to the church's operating budget will be $16,300.71. This represents 4% of the last 3-year average of our unrestricted holding, broken out as 3 year-end value of unrestricted legacies. So again, it's end-of-year unrestricted legacies of 23, 24, and 25. We take 4% of that, and that's what is given towards the church's budget. And for 2026, that adds up to $16,300.71. So I'll repeat that again. Our formula within the church guidelines says you look at 4% of the last 3-year average of our unrestricted holdings. And for 23, 24, and 25, the 3-year average, or the 4% of that 3-year average, is $16,300.71. So that's what the church gets from the investment group towards the church budget. How'd I do? Am I done? Questions? And this is where our friends in Florida will probably be calling with answers if I get something I can't handle. And it's great to see a crowd. Thank you for showing.
Thank you. So Charlie, I just for people's understandings, about vocabulary. So my understanding is the investment portfolio is about $1.1 million.
Yes.
Okay, and then it says it's split 60-40 in restricted and non-restricted holdings. Can you just tell folks what that means, about that investment? What is a restricted holding and what is a non-restricted holding?
Good question. Let me start out and see if my phone rings. Restricted holding is we get gifts from members and previous members that said we were going to give this money to the church for these specific purposes only. That's restricted. Clear? Unrestricted. These are gifts that we receive that don't necessarily have those ties, that has some flexibility.
Thank you. I just wanted folks to understand that, as far as what those funds mean in terms of, liquid assets, in case of some type of an emergency.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people get all excited about, this is a church that has a nice endowment, and it's a healthy endowment. Well, I'd say it is an endowment. We're proud of it. But we have an amazing sanctuary building here, and it requires care. So if a church of this size that needs so much investment to maintain this beautiful worship space and the downstairs, it's just a lovely space. It's expensive. And as we know that we're going to have another capital campaign of some sort to try and raise money just for the building because it's needing some repair. So we have a shortfall. Yes, go ahead. Oh, good. There's someone who has the answers. Absolutely.
If I don't, I'll make them up. Glenn Ellen Roth. The question that I have is, of the $16,000 that kicks back to the church for our budget, when you are talking restricted funds, for example, one that would be for choir music, is that amount in that $16,000, or is that a separate amount that the choir would receive?
Charlie, where'd you go? Oh, there you are.
It's separate. So, having said that, does that mean you would give less to the choir because they've got legacy funds coming in? No. So they would receive the same percentage or whatever of any other team?
Essentially, there's interest.
I don't think people can hear you. Yep. My phone's ringing.
So the easiest way to think about it is we've got $1 million. It gets interest. So of that interest, there is a pro rata amount that's interest from the restricted funds. That money can only be returned to those restrictions and used for those purposes. All the rest can be given back as a pledge up to a limit. So that's where the 16,000 comes from, but you can't cross over. I've actually had a church who wanted to use restricted funds for something else. It takes an act of the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to allow you to spend a penny. So it's very much restricted. It stays restricted. Unrestricted, you can do with what you want. The 16,000 comes out of that pot. I don't know who they're going to want to hear from.
Just don't move fast.
You.
Hi, I'm Patrice Tripp, one of the co-chairs of the Flower and Altar team. And I think even to add a little bit more to Glenn Ellen's question and Charlie's response is, for Flower and Altar team, we have some restricted legacy funds. However, even within those funds that are earmarked for the Flower and Altar team, there are restrictions within those funds. And some of the funds are clearly for Sunday altar flowers only. Some of the funds are for our Thanksgiving cornucopia. And then one of the funds we've been able to, it's a good sized fund, and in speaking with family members of those who gave that money, that's how we've been able to expand what we bought for holiday decorations, our Christmas trees and like that. So I'm going to make an assumption, and we know what that can do sometimes, but even within the choir, there may be X amount of dollars, but within that, there are restrictions for that money. And I think Kris could say the same thing for some of the youth funds. There are restrictions. So it's not just a restricted fund, but a restriction within a restriction.
I got a text from Lynn Solinsky that said Charlie was right on, so he's doing great.
Who knew?
Hello?
That works.
It seems a bit like we're at the mercy of these restricted funds, and it's a lot of money. Is there any end date for those funds?
Good question.
And if this church just, say, closed its doors, what would happen to that money?
It would be adjudicated by the Attorney General. So basically the...
Of this state?
Yes.
Okay. You said something about Massachusetts.
Yeah, that was
was a joke.
historically,
Okay.
yeah, a different church tried to move funds, and we went through trying to figure out the whole process.
Okay.
It varies state by state, but basically it takes an act of government to adjudicate and decide what to do with remaining funds.
What if the church made a decision that they just won't accept these restrictions any further? They'll accept the money, but not the restrictions?
You can only go back to the donor when the donor is actively giving it. They can amend their restrictions down the road.
The owner can?
Only the donor can.
Okay.
Or if they've assigned heirs and however that works, sometimes it's the family. But basically, the best you can do is say, we accept what you want us to do with this money, or we decline the money entirely. We cannot take the money if they want it restricted, we cannot change the restriction.
Okay.
Without
Thank
a
you
full
for the
formal
clarification. Since I got the mic, I'm going to throw out a couple more questions that you might answer at a later time on this. I don't see anything in the report, quickly as I went through it, that tell me the number of members this church has. And I mean, I knew the quorum, that sort of tells me we have 254 members, maybe. And also how we do on attendance. I'm on the deacons, and we take account every Sunday of attendance, but that never gets shared with the...
Catherine?
Yeah.
I don't want to disregard your questions. They're important, but I want to stay on task about the reports that have been presented and kind of keep questions there so that we can keep things going.
Okay.
So I'd like to, if there's no more questions for Brian, I'd like to have a motion. Oh, go ahead, Glenn Ellen.
I just wanted to point out, I understand what you're saying about legacy funds, restricted legacies, but there have been years when that's pretty much all we had. And if people wouldn't give because they couldn't do that, that could hurt us in the long run. Those restricted funds have helped us tremendously in years past. I just use the choir, but it's other areas too.
Jane, do you have a question? Oh, Lynn, go ahead, Lynn. And then Jane.
And, sorry, 73,000, right? So that's what we earned, right? On all the funds, is that correct?
I'll let you.
That's the interest, total gains on the portfolio was $72,895.
How much of that 73,000 is the 40% non-restricted? Is it 40% of the 73?
Yep.
And does that mean that, so what's that, like, I don't know, whoever's good at math, say 30.
Call it
How, can we spend that? Is that funds that we have to put towards our budget?
Yes, in theory, yes.
Okay, so the investment portfolio team has a formula, and they average the fund for 3 years, and they take the gains and give 4%. That's the 16K. But to answer your question, any of the unrestricted legacy funds are liquid in terms of availability.
So say so we could double that 16 if we decided we could do that, right?
We can decide
Okay.
to take $400,000 out today.
So if we decided that
Just saying.
we've talked about the building being important,
Yeah.
but the building without the people, in my opinion, is just a building. And if we need support staff, I personally feel that maybe it's good to invest in our people so that we have a congregation.
Yeah.
So if we need support for our pastor, if we need support for Sue, maybe we need to take some of the funds and put it to good use.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that when we go to the budget and approve the budget. Jane, did you have a question?
Well, I did, but she kind of asked the same question I had, so.
What I'd like to do for Brian's sake here is Art?
So are we approving this budget as presented?
No, I just like to approve the report of the investment team.
Oh, okay.
Just do that, and then we'll move on to the general budget.
Okay.
But in a
I'm a
legal
little
sense,
confused about where we're going.
We need to have a motion to approve what the investment team has reported. Phil? Phil moves. Second? All in favor? Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Brian. So, yeah.
I'll keep this very quick.
Oh.
So you made a very strong point that the overall funds that were received from the church were split 60-40. My only curiosity was, are these percentages subject to change over time, or are they locked in for some time?
They're locked in.
They're locked in, not as actual percentages, but the restricted will, unless somebody donates more, that could actually elevate the 60.
So would you say the percentages almost work off of brackets, perhaps?
Kind of.
Depending on how much, okay. That answers my question.
Unless there are more donations or we use some of the funds, it'll stay at the 60.
The committee didn't decide this ratio, the church did.
Yeah.
Well,
The
I think
donors
in
did.
accuracy, the donors decided it.
Yeah.
Because people who leave money to the church and love the music program or the flowers, or they make the decision and to restrict their legacies, and other donors just appreciate the church and its presence, and they say, we'll leave our legacy unrestricted. So it's not a rule of the committee. It's just where the funds are currently. Is that helpful? Yeah.
Just a comment on the flexibility of the earnings of the unrestricted money. It may be 30,000, but it's a good prudent policy to not take all of that, because it will erode the amount of money that you have for the future. And we have come to depend on that every year, and the cost of all goods, services, living goes up every year. So that's why you don't take it all. You want the overall balance to grow in addition to being able to take some out. So if you do decide to take more than you should, you need a plan on how you're going to do less in the future, because there'll be less money, or a plan on how you're going to be able to bring more money back to restore it. So it may seem like it's available, but it really isn't. It's good investing for the future.
Okay, thank you. Did we vote to? I'm trying to help Brian.
I got a thumbs up. What a boy!
A motion and a second to approve the report of the investment team, which is really just a bookkeeping report and support. Did we do that?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
All
Hold
right.
your applause.
Now we'll go on to the 2026 budget and questions for Charlie, questions for the personnel, facilities. What Charlie has said, as I understand it, we have a budget shortfall currently of about $60,000. And there's been some identified from personnel, some basically by reducing some hours for the sexton, we can realize a savings of about $15K for that, and then there's $3,000 for the bookkeeper. If we felt we didn't need a bookkeeper, even though people seem to think we do. So I'd say we have about a $45,000 deficit. Is that fair, Charlie? Yeah, so the church here today in this meeting has to decide whether they want to approve the budget, you know, and in its current form or change it.
Can I just quickly update? In order to use the unrestricted funds, it takes a 2/3 vote of the congregation to allow us to use that. So just keep that in mind, that it isn't like, oh, okay, we'll just go ahead and transfer and spend it. We do need to get congregation approval.
I have a question about the proposed assistant pastor position. Has a job description been drawn up on that? And does anyone care to share it? Or, I mean, it could build some interest if we knew what that person might be doing. And if you can answer my question about number of members and then attendance, it kind of helps with, as you said, we got big cash one year and not the other in offerings. So just more data.
So Phil, Phil's the lead on the personnel, and I'll ask him to address the assistant pastor question.
Okay, I can tell you where the associate pastor came from. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of conversation in our team and with the minister about the need for more pastoral care. Scott does tremendous work. There's also a lot of things he cannot get to. There's also a lot of things that he would like to begin to expand. And this year, with the talking of the comprehensive campaign that's down the road, we got to talk about what that means, because we can't add more and have just the same number of people. So we had so many notes here, I didn't know what was going on. In terms of the associate pastor, what we're trying to do is expand pastoral care, which includes more Christian education. Right now, we do a wonderful job with our young kids. We do not do as good a job with kids as they get older and with adults. We also are trying to expand what we do for community outreach and how we do that. And he doesn't like me to say it, but we're taxing him to death, and I don't think that's a good idea. So we tried to put this in to try to begin a broader conversation about it. And the only way we could put it in, we said, okay, let's think about beginning with a half-time associate pastor, and what would that mean financially, and how then we begin to talk about that. And it got to the point where we're doing the budget, and we've had some conversation about it, but not a lot. We do have an old job description of an associate pastor, because a few years ago we tried to get one. But the idea that if we do get in this budget, a team would be formed to create a very specific one to present it back to the council and the congregation of what that is before we move forward. Therefore, what we did is said, okay, if we had a full-time associate pastor, the cost of that would be about 80% of what the pastor's salary is. And for a figure, not more the salary, what the cost of the position is, the cost of our pastor right now is about $140,000. And that counts salary, it counts retirement, it counts insurance, it counts the the use of the house, counts all of that. So if you take 80% of that, that's $112,000 probably for a year-round associate pastor full-time. And so we're looking at half-time, so we said half of that. That's $56,000. And said, realistically, we need to go through a process to decide what this should be. So there's no way we're going to have this right off the bat. So we said, what's a half-time associate pastor for half a year? That's $28,000. And that's what's in this budget for that right now. Scott, did I cover everything? Did I embarrass you? Okay, good. I was trying to do both of those things. Okay, so that's what that is. Does that make any sense?
Thanks, Phil. Art?
My question has to do sort of with what was just said about the pastor. It has to do with the development committee, which is on there, which is going to be revived, the program development committee, which actually happened on the, looking back about 13 or 14 years ago, after the associate pastor had went off to another church, and we lost an associate pastor. We developed a program development team in order to develop programs like adult education and other things. And actually what this did was looked into the gifts of this church. The gifted people who are into education, who are Christian leaders in other different forms. Out of that program development came all kinds of discussion groups, adult education programs, etc. I guess what I'm wondering is there's nothing on there budgeted for the program development committee. And that's an alternative way of going. And I'm just wondering why there's nothing on there. It is going to be revived, and Tom, you're trying to revive it. But I'm wondering if there's any money attached to it for programs like that can come out of it.
Art, I appreciate your question about a budget for the program development team, but I'm trying to keep us focused on, I would just say that there are monies available for programs for spiritual enrichment of the church. The Johnson Atkinson Fund has about $35,000 available. Last year we returned about $15,000 or $20,000 back to the fund. There is no lack of money for programs for spiritual development of the church. So for that reason, the program development team, which is being reconstituted, made no budget request because we don't need money from the congregation. I'm sounding a little bit weary up here. I apologize if I'm coming across as weary, but I'm trying to get us to a place where we can take a motion to vote on this budget as presented by Charlie, or if there's some other motion to do something other than that. Eric, yes.
In lieu of a deficit budget, I understand that we reached out to the congregation for anybody who'd like to increase their pledges. Are there still ways for people to increase their pledge even though it's too late for the budget as it's being presented here today? And what mechanism is in place for somebody to do that?
That's a great question. So as an outcome of last week's budget meeting, a request was made from several people to say, has everybody made a pledge? Do people understand why pledges are important? And is there an opportunity for people still to pledge? And is there an opportunity for people to reconsider and increase their pledge? So that email went out on Tuesday, which wasn't very long ago. And if you are like me, you probably don't read every email that comes into your in basket. So I would say, certainly not every buddy in the church read that email. So in response to Eric's question, yes, if you have not pledged, Sue, you can send your pledge directly to Sue in the form of an email. It's as good as a written card. We trust you. And if there are people that have not yet thought about maybe increasing their pledge, you can do that again. It just takes an email to Sue, just give her a number. And so that is an opportunity, and that opportunity is open all year round. So thank you for that reminder. I know there are people in this room that have still not gotten around to getting in touch with Sue because they've talked with me already this morning. So that's always something to keep in mind. Yes, please, your name and the microphone. Oh, there's a couple people. Sorry, Patrice. And then
Hi,
Heather.
Patrice Tripp again. When the money from the investments that goes into the budget at 4%, with such an increase in all of our costs over time, over the last few years, I'm not talking about covering the full deficit, but is 4% still the right amount that would be considered to transfer from investments to the budget? Or are we now looking at, with our increased costs, not just for 25 to 26, but this has been going on from 20, 21, it's been going on for years now, and are we still trying to catch up with some of the increase in what we're paying out, electricity, our taxes, and what those types of things? And it's a question of I don't know. I'm asking it.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I want to go back to Catherine because I didn't answer her question about members and growth, and I can't answer those questions, but that information Sue could send that out, or we could get that from Sue.
That information is on the deacons page?
On which?
Deacons.
Okay,
report.
in the diaconate report, that information is available. I also would like to point out that the number of pledges is down from last year. So it's not just a question of rising costs. The number of pledges is down, and if we had the same amount of pledges as last year at the average value, we wouldn't be having this discussion about a deficit. So there's many factors here at play, right? And we could spend the rest of the day talking about them. And that might be a worthwhile use of time or not. But I'm trying to decide if we are ready, if we're willing to make a decision here today. If we're not, then we have a whole nother situation.
John Brockington, I'd like to formally make a motion that we accept the 2026 budget request summary conservatively with a $61,000 overage or shortfall. And the only thing I'd like to add to that is I'd like to ask, probably don't want to put you on the spot, that we do a quarterly report, that we just do a quarterly updates against that, maybe call them contingent spends, whatever we plan to do. But I'd like to make that formal motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is a second? We have a second. Okay, the motion is open for, Heather had her, yes. It includes,
no, we can get to like 45.
So John's motion includes the budget as proposed to the church by the council in its current form. Yes. Including the bookkeeper, the associate pastor, and the hours for the sexton. And the, what's that? And part of the motion is that the council report to the congregation quarterly. And those of you who were there last week, that sentiment came from multiple people on the floor, and it was part of my job as a moderator to make that happen. But I'm very happy to make it, a requirement of the motion. I think it's really healthy, and a lot of good came out of last week's meeting. I wish we had started that earlier. So, okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on John's motion? Or on the motion on the floor, I should say.
Thank you. So I will hesitantly vote for this. I'm worried about the future. What we're doing is building in a $45,000 problem for next year. So we're running in a deficit, right? And it comes true that we're in the hole, even if we hire the associate pastor.
It's a projected deficit.
Correct. Correct. And so on top of that, we're only funding 1/4 of the associate pastor. So if that wants to be continued, you have to raise another $75,000 for that position in the next budget.
There's already a plan for that.
Yeah,
There's a plan for that.
How's it funded?
Later this year, there's a team from the church that is working on a combined campaign and I don't want to get into that now, but it's for a number of things, and that also includes money to fund that position going forward.
Let me make it clear, actually. My question and tone is sounding like I'm not in favor of it. I am in favor of it. I think it's absolutely essential that we bring this position on. What I'm trying to do is paint a picture of the financial challenge that we're going to have to face in order to do what is absolutely necessary for the long-term future of the church. This position is important. I'm not trying to push Scott out, but you've got to start looking at succession planning as well, and having that stability of an associate pastor. I don't know about you, but I don't want to go through the transition that we had a few years ago before Scott came, and that was not good for the church. And so I think this is absolutely instrumental. But where I was going with the numbers is we got a 45. If the budget comes in 45 deficit at the end of the year, we got to come up with another 75. And there's going to be more $50,000 a year repairs here. Pledges are going to have to start approaching at least a 50% increase compared to where they are today for the future, or we're going to continue to erode our fund balances, and then we're going to have to start planning a transition for the church. I don't want to be the guy that everybody looks at now that he was negative Nelly at this meeting, but I mean, we really have to have a good strategic plan for this. It's just the financial
We have a
reality.
strategic plan that is in place. It hasn't been rolled out, Nate. We have Dale and Tim, who are the team for that. They have people, some of whom are sitting in this room, that are dedicated to the well-being of this church and that are working with a financial consultant. There's a lot going on that just, I'm not part of that. I feel like I shouldn't even be saying anything, but I want you to say that your specific concern is being specifically addressed at a very significant level by people who have been members of this church for a long time.
If I may, there's
please,
also
Mike, please.
an element of,
Mike, Charlie.
I've done this with multiple churches. There's always that, well, we need to have the staff in place, and that's very uncomfortable. We think that's going to bring in new members and new pledges, and there are always people who say, show me the new pledges and then we'll support the what's required to get there. And it's a little bit of a circular argument. So to some extent, it's a leap of faith that if we do bring in an associate pastor, we'll strengthen the programs, we'll bring in some new members, people will be even more excited, maybe pledge more. But it's tough if you project forward that we won't get any return on the associate pastor position. So to some degree, we kind of need to have a little bit of faith that if we do the right things, we'll be more attractive and more money will come in. I can't quantify it. I can't say for certain that it will be covered, but in theory.
Tom, I'd like to call the question and in doing so say, we can vote on John Brockington's motion in favor, and then just consider out how we're going to do what that requires.
The question has been called for a vote. Yes. Glen Ellen? Yeah, go ahead. What's that? We had a motion, we had a second, we had a discussion. His motion was never amended. What's the amendment, please? That was part of his original motion. Okay, and it's been seconded, we've had discussion, and Peter has called the question for a vote. Can we just repeat, just for the record, John, would you like to just repeat your motion so it's clear to folks?
So the formal motion is to accept the proposed 2026 request as presented with a $61,000 overage, including quarterly reports from the treasurer or the council.
All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
No, it wasn't unanimous.
Oh, wasn't? Was there a dissent?
There were a couple dissenters.
Oh, I strike that comment from the minutes.
Two dissenting votes.
Okay, no, that's fine. Just not unanimous. Yeah. Doug?
Doug McCrae, Church Council and Personnel. The half-time position for the associate pastor is a half-time position, Nathan. It's not a full-time position, and it would only be half a year. So just to clarify, you were thinking it was going to be another $80,000 or $90,000. It's going to be a half-time position to start, just to let you know.
Yes, please.
I'm not sure if I should be speaking or not speaking at this moment, but I share this gentleman's concern about carrying forward a deficit. I appreciate your comments about letting us know. You're saying you shouldn't let us know, but I really appreciate you letting us know that there are people assigned who are working on the budget for the future.
That's right.
And I think we do need to know those things. The more we know, the better informed we are, the better we can do this budget and carry this church forward.
Thank you. That came across to me loud and clear last Sunday. It's gratifying to me personally to know that people care and have concerns, and you know that we're just working the plan that we hear from you. And so again, we now have the motion passed that we do this quarterly, and it's going to be more than financial. It's going to, a lot of other interesting things came out of the meeting last week.
I have not read this packet, of course. So the questions or the comments I'm going to make may be answered in here, but in future budget presentations, I would like to know the breakdown of what we pay personnel.
Yep.
And I would like to be informed about where all of our money comes from. I'm hearing bits and pieces.
Yep. It's all in here. It's all in here.
I'm sure.
It's in there, and
I'm sure.
Process improvement.
I'll read it to
And we will get out in front of it so that people actually have time to read it.
So in March or early April, when we have our first quarterly meeting, that gives people a couple of months to go through this, and we'd like your input. I'd like to make one other point that's, I think, very important. Another thing that came across to me last week, people were frustrated because they were getting this information, with very little time before this meeting. And I just, at the time, last week, I apologized. I made a personal apology. But I'd also like to point out that we have a stewardship team in our governance structure that has been unpopulated for 2 years. So for 2 years
Longer
at
than
least,
that. Much
there's been.
longer than that.
Sorry?
Much longer than 2 years.
So I just going from my memory.
Yeah.
So again, how that stewardship team would work with the treasurer and be a conduit of communication to the congregation, but it has been unpopulated. That is another issue the church has. So with that being said, I want to go right into my very brief statement. I think we've got everything. We've got Charlie, thank you very much. We've passed, yes. Tim's not here, so I'm going to just speak on behalf of the moderator. What did the council do last year if we weren't minding the budget? That's so a couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, 10 years ago maybe, the council was charged with not doing less in the day-to-day governance of the church and doing more with the longer range issues of the church. So last 2 years, we've been doing that. And last year we dug into it really heavy. We had potlucks, we had after congregational meetings, we had questionnaires. We tried to get as much input from the church as far as what did people want, what was working, what was important. And then we took that information and we spent several meetings going through that as a council and trying to see what are the common threads? What are we hearing from our congregation? And we came up with 3 things. This church, what we were told, wants to outreach to the local communities. That we don't want to just be here on beach in Maine and come here and Sunday and go. We want to be engaged with the community. And the second thing that came out was we need people in our governance structure to operate successfully. And how do we do that? That's a challenge that we haven't fully addressed, but it'll be on the plate for this year. And the third thing, which Scott has mentioned already today, which came out, and probably in the strongest way, was people were responding to how difficult it was to have conversations about what's happening in our world, and how do we have these conversations with each other as a faith community. And I don't have to tell anybody in this room how polarized the vocabulary has become in this country. So that also came to the third thing was, how can we practice that? How can we learn to do that? How can we gather in small groups and learn how to talk about how we're impacted by what's happening in the country, and how can we dialogue across different perspectives. And it's hard because in the council we were not all of one mind, and we had some really charged conversations. So we realized that this is difficult, but we want to be able to see each other as fellow travelers, fellow pilgrims, and learn to talk about why we've come to conclusions and how can we continue to grow. And if we can't do that here in the church, how can we do it outside the church? So we already have the first deep discussion group starting next Sunday, but we hope there'll be more. That's it. That's all I have. If I've missed anything, my contact information is on the website. Sue?
There's a paragraph that you need to read.
The last paragraph, yes. Vote on what? Oh, so the slate of officers, we have to make a correction to the council. Yeah. Stephen has withdrawn his name. It's not because he doesn't like us. He just has a lot of other issues that are, that he can't serve on council. So you can see we've got a couple of open spots on the council. If anybody feels like they want to be more engaged, please contact either Scott or myself. We also need a clerk. Clerk is vacant. And we're going to use Otter AI as our clerk for this meeting. I guess other teams are doing it in the church, but we do need a clerk. So with that being said, the 2026 slate of officers, which is on page 24, it's just that upper chart. I'd like a motion to approve, subject to the amendment I made about Stephen. Move, second? Second, all in favor? Aye? Okay, thank you. And the last motion presented, I would like to make a motion to ratify all actions of the church and its officers and all teams on behalf of this church from January 19th, 2025 and to this date. I'd like a motion, please, to pass that. Second, all in favor? Opposed? I don't know. We could. I don't know why we would have to. Okay. So do we? All in favor of accepting the clerk's report as was read by? Who read it? Who read it? Eric. Thank you. Signify saying aye. Nays? All right. Thank you, Peter. Not sure why we need a vote on that, but motion to close the meeting? Second? Scott, do you want to, before we close, we'll vote shortly after Scott gives us a send-off. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone who asked your questions, and let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for your presence with us as you guided our conversation, as you helped us share with one another our hopes and dreams, as well as concerns for the life of our church family. Continue to guide us, direct us in these coming days and weeks. May we do everything that we can by your leading. We offer this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. And now roll up your sleeves and help get ready for MLK Day tomorrow.